Welcome to the Premipod, the podcast dedicated to sharing the powerful, inspiring, and often emotional stories of families and healthcare professionals navigating the world of premature birth.
Whether you're a parent, a healthcare worker, or just someone looking to understand the journey, we're here to offer support and insight, one episode at a time.
So tune in as we dive into real experiences and explore the strength of the neonatal community. We're your hosts, Kirsty, Dimity and Meg. Hello and welcome to the Premi Pod. We're here with Katlyn Davis, a mum and NICU nurse, and she is going to chat about her son Cooper, who has congenital heart disease. He was born at how many weeks? 37 weeks, and was diagnosed at 20 weeks gestation.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your and Cooper's story? Explain, like how the pregnancy went. Yeah.
Okay. So basically we found out we were pregnant on our honeymoon in Japan. So that was really exciting. Bit nerve-wracking. And I was also, a bit confused at the time. I thought I was sick from the trams and that sort of thing. Then to find out I was actually pregnant, I was like, okay, holy shit, here we go. So came home from Japan and started the process of the bloods and all of that sort of thing. And so it was all confirmed. So that was very exciting. Took a bit for us to get our heads around because he wasn't necessarily a planned pregnancy. So he was unexpected. And obviously very soon after our wedding. So we didn't get that honeymoon phase for long, that's for sure. So everything was going really well with the pregnancy.
Who were you going through? Was it GP, MGP?
MGP,
MGP?
yeah.
Yep.
So going through MGP and my midwife was really, really lovely. It was actually somebody I'd gone to uni with, so that was really nice.
That's
I already had
cool.
a little bit of a rapport with her. It just kind of felt really natural and I didn't have to pretend. I could just be honest and ask all the silly questions.
I can only imagine what you're asking.
So I was the first one out of my friend group to have a baby. So everyone was super excited and they're like, oh, when you have your baby, I'm going to do this and this. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. You can help me raise it too because I don't know what I'm doing. So that was really exciting for everyone, I think. So so as we went along, everything was going really well. I was working as a nurse at the time and I went for my anatomy scan. So
What about your 13-week scan? Was that all normal?
yeah, that was all normal.
Mm-hmm.
I did the NIP test and everything came back that everything was really normal.
Mm-hmm.
So we just, continued as usual. Everyone was like, oh, you're so young, you're healthy, don't expect any complications kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess once you pass that 12-week mark.
What job were you doing? Where were you working as a nurse?
I was just working at a GP.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah. So I would often whip out the Doppler at work and just it's got a really strong heartbeat, things look really good. And I'd be like, oh wait, is that mine or is that the baby's? And then I'd get someone else in. I'm like, can you listen? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is great. It's still in there sort of thing. So that was a little bit of reassurance because you go through that period where you're just okay, the bloods say there's something going on here. But until you can feel it and, you've got that confirmation at scans and stuff, you're just sort of stuck in limbo land, just hoping and praying that everything goes okay. And it's just out of your control. So
did you ever think anything wasn't okay? Or did you ever have any
I think because every time I had a scan or I heard the Doppler, I was oh, okay, everything looks okay. My bloods were always really good. I had no low HCG levels or anything in the beginning. So everything was really reassuring to begin with. So that just, put me at ease. And I think because everyone was just oh, you're young, problems don't occur for young people all the time.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of oh, okay. I guess it kind of put me into this false
sense of
security.
Yeah.
Exactly. And after that 12-week mark, I think what they consider that 12-week safe zone.
Yeah.
Once we were out of that, I was we're cruising from here.
Yeah. And why ask where you worked? Because you didn't work in NICU yet. So you didn't have any
had no
bad thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I wasn't in there. So I didn't have all those, these are potential outcomes or you know, things.
Am I going to have a
things
24-weeker? Am I going to have a this or
yeah,
that?
exactly.
You just went into it a bit blind and
yeah. And like I'd have babies come in for like, you know, like their 6-week vaccinations and stuff. And I'd be like, oh, I can put them on the scale. I can undress them for you. I'm like, oh, yeah, I can change their nappy too, no problem.
Just practicing.
Normally, the mums are like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, I'm just excited. But never would I have thought that I'd end up in NICU working with babies all the time at that point in my life. So I sort of worked at a GP because it was like, you know, easy for my life at that time. My husband worked FIFO, so like I had weekends off and I wasn't doing like the shift work and that sort of thing. So it was just really convenient. I was like, this is great. I'll be able to like send them to daycare 5 days a week and, you know, have all the free time in the world after and on weekends. But yeah, like as you will learn, like that's sort of not how life played out. And yeah.
So can you tell us about your scans?
So like I was saying, up until the 20-week scan, everything was looking pretty normal. And we had no signs of, you know, any issues going on. I had started to like kind of like get really fluidy and some like black spots in my vision. I was getting carpal tunnel really bad. So like in terms of the baby, everything seemed fine, but I was just having some of those really shitty pregnancy symptoms, I guess. So I had really bad carpal tunnel in my hand that sort of started around 18 weeks and just progressively got worse over time. And soon after my 20-week scan, I was actually told that I had preeclampsia. So we were treating
really
that from
early
quite
to
early
be
on.
Diagnosed with
Yeah.
that.
And yeah, like I said, I was really fluidy and my nose tripled in size.
That's literally the first thing I thought of.
Yeah. So, but other than that,
you don't notice it too. Like when you see that, like when I seen you every day, I didn't notice you had a big nose until we looked back at the photos.
Honestly. I look back at photos and I'm like, how did I go in public like that? And like, I didn't notice it at first. My dad was the first one to point it out. And I got so self-conscious. I was like, oh my God, like it is. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to have stretch marks in my nose. Because I was like, how can that get that big and like not? So, but yeah, no, it went down. I think it's back to normal. But yeah, so other than that, like, yeah, other than those like few symptoms I had, everything was going well. I went into my 20-week scan. It's actually like, I look back now and I like laugh about it because if I don't laugh, I'll cry. But that particular day I was like, oh, I really want you to come to this scan to my husband, Lockie. And he was like, oh, I've got to do a job out at Woodstock. So like he was a bit of a drive away and he's like, I'll do my best to make it back in time. And he called me like an hour before the appointment time and he was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm not quite finished and I've still got like an hour's drive. And I'm like, oh, shit. All right, well, I'll get mum to come because I just had in my head, you know, like if anything was to come out, I would want someone to be there.
Yeah.
I rung Dim too, actually. And I was like, oh, could you potentially come? And she's like, if your mum can't, I'll come kind of thing. But mum was able to leave work and come.
We all learn your mum is a real MVP.
Yeah, she is.
She is. Shout out to Katrina Doug.
Yeah, mum, thank you. So yeah, she came with me to the scan and like we walked in, I was like all excited and I'm like, yeah, I'll get some good photos out of this one. Like, and when we walked in, we ended up having a student like sonographer and like the lady that was with her was like, oh, I've got to leave the room. Like, are you happy if she continues? I will review all the pictures she takes and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, no problem.
That student would have been in for a fright.
Yeah, I think she definitely was. She was really chatty to begin with. And she was like, oh, like he's a little bit on the smaller side, but he looks like he's growing okay. Well, actually, no, she didn't use like the he words because we weren't finding out the gender.
Yeah, right.
So she was like, baby looks good, you know, like that sort of thing. And then she sort of went quiet. Anyway, so I was just talking to mum. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's a penis or if that's a vagina. And the lady was
if
like,
anyone knows Katlyn, she does not shut up. So I can only imagine.
And I'm like asking all these questions to the lady. Not that I knew what questions to ask, but I'm like, oh, what's that? Is that a kidney? Oh, it's this. What's that? And like she was like trying to answer, but she was like really concentrating. And she's like, oh, I'm just like looking around the heart at the moment. I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's not a kidney then. So I was like, all right, I'll just sit here and shut up and wait till the end. Anyway, she was like, oh, I just got to go get like the lady I'm working under so she can check over the photos and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no problem. Like,
Because she said she was going to come back anyways. And you knew
yeah,
she was
so
a
I didn't
student.
really think anything of it. And then so Mum and I were just like talking and Mum's like, oh, I think I might have saw a penis. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to know because I didn't want to know. Anyway, so then the ladies come back in and they were both like really looking around the heart. And now that I knew they were looking around the heart, I was like, oh, is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, we're just having like a good look just to make sure like structurally everything's there. And then she was like, you know, doing their thing. So I was just like, all right, I'll just sit here and shut up. So let them concentrate, make sure everything's okay. Anyway, they finished like scanning and the lady said, I'm not supposed to say anything, but there's something really wrong with your baby's heart and we think this needs to be seen to ASAP. So we can't give you any results or tell you ins and outs of it, but we're just advising you to go straight to your GP and tell them because like I'd sort of said, I work at a GP and like that sort of thing. So they'll like maybe go back to work and see if you can get one of the GPs to sort of send the referral to the MFM team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So were they going to send the results straight away to your GP? Like,
I think they still, yeah, it was like the next day they had the results.
Yeah.
Everything moved pretty quickly because that was like.
What did you say?
I was like, oh, okay, no worries. I think I was just a bit in shock, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think like the idea that I was like, oh, I wanted someone to come with me in case something was wrong. And then for them to be like, something's wrong. You need to go to your GP. So I was like, oh, okay, like, you know, it could be a hole in the heart. Like it could be anything, you know. So I did. I went back to work and I was like, you know, to the GP and she's like, oh, did they tell you anything? And I'm like, no, they didn't tell me anything. They just said something's really wrong. So then they referred me to MFM, but because they had nothing to refer me with, they were just sort of like.
We don't know either.
Yeah, like we're like, can you please see this patient urgently, basically, for more scans of like the anatomy of the heart and whatnot. And so I think my scan might have been on like a Thursday. And I think I was seen by MFM like the following Wednesday because by the time the weekend, like this was like a late Thursday afternoon. So Friday morning, they would have received the referral. And then so Monday they started processing and they're like, we can get you in on Wednesday. So I went in on the Wednesday and I saw them and they were like, this is quite complex. And I was trying to be really open-minded because like, obviously you have no choice but to be like positive and like, you know, like it might
and
not be
also
so
you're
bad.
already like 20 weeks, over 20 weeks at this stage.
Yeah.
Too.
So like,
Were you feeling him kick and things like that at this stage?
Yeah. So I think I started feeling things at around like 17 weeks. So I was like, no, he's fine. I check his Doppler all the time at work. Like there's nothing wrong with his heart. And I think I was just like in a bit of in denial and like just trying to be positive because like you've got no other choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, went in and saw like the MFM team and there was 2 MFM doctors and they were both like trying to scan and see if they could work out like what the anatomy looked like and whether they could see like specific structural things that are like, you know, common defects for hearts and those sorts of things. And they were both sort of a little bit mind boggled. So they started taking videos because they were like, oh, we can send these off to the fetal cardiologist and like we should have some answers. Like made phone calls while I was in there and they were like, you know, like we've got this patient, these are this like situation and can you like check these photos ASAP because we need to know what we need to do sort of from there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they did that and then they were like, okay, look, often cardiac defects come with chromosomal abnormalities. And I was like, okay, like what does that mean? And, you know, you're a nurse, but like when you're in this situation, you're just thinking of it like you're a mum.
Yeah.
So that whole nursing knowledge, everything just feels like it leaves you because you're just like, holy shit, like this is my baby. This isn't like some research that I'm doing for an assignment or this isn't somebody else's living the experience and I'm just doing my best to try and help them through that process. Like this is my life now. And I'm thinking about it like from a personal perspective, not like nursing interventions sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, so they were like, okay, like these are the things that are common with cardiac defects. The thing we should do is a amniocentesis. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. They were like, the risks are, you know, potential miscarriage, And if anybody knows me, I am shit scared of needles. And the amniocentesis is like basically a big needle that goes through your belly into your amniotic fluid in your stomach, and not in your stomach, but you know what I mean? That like basically they can test that, and it will test for like chromosomal abnormalities for the baby. And so they send that away, and it can take quite a few weeks. So the results weren't like available straight away.
Yeah.
So by the time we got those results, we already had the cardiac diagnosis from the fetal cardiologist, but it was just like reassurance for us that there were no chromosomal abnormalities that were contributing to the cardiac condition. So like not that the cardiac condition was any better because of that, because it is still quite complex.
It just gave you like a rounded answer.
Yeah, and it was just that reassurance that this is the only thing we're dealing with.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
we don't have potential other things that could necessarily be going on as
Yeah.
well. Because
And-
often you see,
Yeah.
you know, there's other things
Like
that
Down
come hand in
syndrome
hand
and
with
that
it.
that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
They often have cardiac conditions, but there's other things
Yes.
that also
Correct.
that
Yeah.
follow with those things. So it was just like reassurance that we're just dealing with the heart here instead of, you know, like a broader sort of area of things. And so for that diagnosis, we actually ended up having to fly to Brisbane. So when I was about 23, between 23 and 24 weeks, we flew to Brisbane, and we saw the fetal cardiologist there, and he did a scan. My mum and dad came, my husband came, his mum came too, just to give us like some support. It was a really hard time because after the amniocentesis test, like in like where we live, we got told basically often with quite complex cardiac conditions, you've only got like 3 options. There's normally like palliation once a baby's born, termination, or surgical like palliative care basically. So we were like, okay, there's not really any good to that. They all sound like terrible options.
So there was never any like, we're just going to give it like
Everything.
our best
Yeah.
try. Like there was never any of that
No.
kind of talk or option.
No, it felt really negative.
Yeah.
Like it was almost like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And so like I walked out of that hospital thinking like that can't be the only answer. Like
What did they say to you? Like, what did they say? Like, the diagnosis was at that appointment.
yeah, so that when we were at home having that, they sort of gave me those 3 options. But once we got to Brisbane, the Brisbane fetal cardiologist was like, you've only got 2 options really. He said that the heart condition that like Cooper has is quite complicated, and often they don't see really good outcomes. So just to put it in like really simple terminology, Cooper's heart, basically only half of his heart formed.
Yeah,
So the
right.
other half is like underformed, and some of the parts to his heart, like some valves and that, don't exist at all. And so you can't just go and replace half a heart, put, you know, like a couple of chambers on the side or anything like that. So often people do opt to terminate the pregnancy because it is a journey. And they did make that very clear. They were not, you know, like blindsiding me whatsoever. They were honest, and they did say that majority of the time only 10% of people would continue with the pregnancy, and it would generally be purely based around religious beliefs of not
Yeah.
terminating.
So do you think, like, in a
pregnancy.
way they were pushing you to?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
I
sad. And
did-
you were only young. You were only, what, like 20?
Yeah, 20,
baby.
I would have been probably 22 at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's sad.
Yeah. So that was really hard because, you know, like I felt like I was pressured, and I guess like when like we're in the scan and the doctor was very excited because like it was obviously like a cool structure or cool anatomy and
Something you don't see.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
at the time we were like, oh, like he seems like happy and excited almost
Yeah,
because he
that's
was like,
sad.
oh. So I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe it's not all doom and gloom. And then basically they take you out of like the like ultrasound room and into like a room where they give you counselling basically. And so they like went through like all of his diagnosis and
Which
said,
is?
Yeah.
It's-
Do you want to list
it's
all
a
of
big
them?
list.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a long list, and it's like they're big words. And it's like if you don't have like sort of like background knowledge, it's hard to understand what that looks like. But he's got double inlet left ventricle, which means basically his main arteries drain into the left ventricle, and he's got a hypoplastic right ventricle, which means like it's just basically like a little rudimentary chamber, like a little sac that just hangs off the side of his heart. So it doesn't actually work at all. He's got transposition of the greater arteries, which means like the two main arteries are switched. So I guess like in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really matter because it's all draining into the one chamber. But in some single ventricle hearts, the other chamber still forms, and so they can go down a different avenue with like how they can fix that, like, and change the circulation back to like original sort of circulation. But for Cooper, because there's only the one chamber, they're both draining in there. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't going to make or change anything for him. He's got like a big hole in between the two top chambers of his heart, and a big hole in between like that little sac chamber and then his left chamber or ventricles. So he's also got, they're called ASDs and VSDs. And then he's got some pulmonary stenosis, so tightening of his pulmonary artery. So for some kids that have like a similar like anatomy to Cooper, that can like be quite bad, but his wasn't too bad. It meant that he didn't need surgery like within days of being born. He was able to push it out for like 5 weeks. So I guess in a way his body has done what it can to sort of like try and correct and like manage on its own, which was amazing because like that wasn't necessarily what the doctors thought would happen. So for that to come out, for him to come out and be like, okay, I got this for a couple of weeks.
So like between that scan and like you having him, like what did you do?
Basically went on a roller coaster, buckled up and held on. So it was actually a really traumatic time in my life. How
did you come to also the decision that you were like, I'm doing this?
Yeah.
So I feel like knowing you, like you would never not do it, but like, and you would be so in your head because all these medical professionals are telling you, you shouldn't do it.
It was really hard. It was hard because my husband was obviously there and heard it all, and he is very black and white. This is wrong, this is right. Yeah. This is yes, this is no. And for him, he was like, the doctors are telling us that this isn't a good idea. And I'm like, but I'm telling you, I don't think I could cope if I did what they did. Yeah. Because like at the end of the day, I was thinking in my head, like, if I terminate this pregnancy now, I'm taking away any chance that he has of fighting. Yep. If I continue with the pregnancy, at least then like the baby will get the chance to, I guess, fight, or if they weren't strong enough, then like, you know, it wasn't going to be any different of an outcome to if I was to terminate. Yeah. So I was like, I don't think I could live with taking away that chance for them. So I was like, no, I need to do this. And as much as it was hard for my husband, he got on board and he did support me. Yeah. He struggled. Like it wasn't obviously what he wanted necessarily.
I don't think it's like not that he didn't want it. He's probably just more confused because like these big doctors in big positions are saying, don't do this.
Yeah. And he was just scared of, I guess, like forming this bond with this baby and then for that to potentially be taken away. Yeah. And like I got where he was coming from 100%, but for me that bond was already formed. Like that baby was in my belly and I was feling it kick and you know, like all the symptoms, the fat nose, everything. I was like, if I'm going through all of this, you're coming with me. So I like it really opened my eyes. I had lots of people like giving me their opinions and that was really, really difficult because I was like, you haven't been in this situation. You can't tell me what you would do. And for me, that was really hard because like I just wanted everyone to be like, no, you're making the right choice so that I could live with the decision I'd made.
But also to know that you had that support around
absolutely.
you. Because if they're saying that in your head, you're like, well, you're not supporting this baby, this pregnancy or me, you know?
Yeah. And like the thing is, like, I don't think that was their intention. They were just like, I guess, trying to protect us from the potential of losing this baby and like the pain that would be associated with that because like obviously it wouldn't just affect us but our family and like the people that are close to us and around us. So I understood where they were coming from, but I was also like, I don't really want to hear your opinion.
Yeah. And I guess too for people, like, they probably didn't know what answer you wanted. Like they didn't know what to say, like whether you wanted to do this, whether you wanted to do this. So like no definitely. Answer in any circumstance could have been the right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
Did you reach out to other cardiac families
I
during
did.
that time?
I did a lot of research. I like lost so much sleep over it. I would like all night I'd be looking for people, and on Facebook, Instagram, like there was like Reddit forums and stuff like that of other cardiac like families and like their experiences and stuff, and a lot of it was like overseas.
But are you in like an American group or something?
Yeah, I've joined quite a few pages. I've got friends all over the world. But I guess like in America, their medical system is very different to ours, and a lot of people continued with pregnancies that like they didn't necessarily want to, or you know, like they didn't have any choice because there wasn't availability for other options. So like people that I've connected with, some of them are adults and like not necessarily the same diagnosis, but I guess similar in the sense that they have one ventricle or one pumping chamber. So they go down like a similar course of surgeries. And I think at the time of like learning Cooper's diagnosis, I think the lady that I met from America was, I think, in her 40s. She didn't have any of her own children. She was a female though, so like obviously that's very different for a female to have that sort of heart condition and to carry a baby. But she was living somewhat of a relatively normal life. And for me, I was like, she's 40. Like that is like incredible.
It gave you
like,
hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Yeah, and there was like other families that had younger children and that hadn't necessarily fully gone through like the whole stages of the correction of their circulation, just sort of thing. So they were like living somewhat normal lives as well. And I'm not talking hundreds of kids. I'm talking, you know, a couple of handfuls of people from all over the world. But that for me was enough to give me that little bit of hope that I needed to just like reinforce that like I can make this decision and I can do it and like we'll just ride it out. And so, yeah, basically it was up and down right up until we had him. But there was a point when I was about 28 weeks where I was getting phone calls saying like, oh, like you're running out of time. If you want to terminate, like you need to make that decision. Oh, and I was just like,
leave me alone.
Yeah. And I just kept telling them I haven't made the decision yet, but I knew in my heart and in my head I had. I guess I was like worried about letting the people around me down by like coming out and saying that. And yeah, so I think they got the message when I just didn't like let them know.
Screen them call.
Decline.
And like I was having regular scans and that sort of thing, and like, you know, they'd go through the options with me each time. So I was just a bit like, yeah, okay, thank you for letting me know my options, and then I'd sort of gone my way.
Yeah.
And then so basically, yeah, like that was just like the journey emotionally was very draining. I was obviously still working and processing all of this at the time. And so, like, you know, just the little things like buying stuff, buying a pram, buying a cot. I'm like, do I buy these things or not? Am I bringing this baby home? I didn't know what the future held. And so for me, that was really, really difficult. And so
did you end up buying anything or did you put it all off?
So we had actually like around that 12-week safe mark, we'd gone and like purchased everything and put it on like a big lay-by because we didn't have a huge house and we had nowhere really to store it. So we were just like, we'll just put it on lay-by and we'll pick it up like, you know, a month or two before the baby comes, we'll set it all up because at that time we didn't know about the heart stuff. And then like as time went on and we've learnt about the heart, we were just like, we just won't pick it up yet.
Yeah.
It's there if we need it. And basically when all of this came about, we found out we wouldn't be having the baby at home. We'd be moving to Brisbane for a little while.
And did you have a baby shower or anything? Like what was that experience like?
No, didn't.
No.
I didn't end up having one. We planned on it, but just with like I said, I got preeclampsia, so I got quite unwell.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting flown to Brisbane at 34 weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I ended up staying there until I had him at 37 weeks. The idea was send me there for him to be born because I was getting quite unwell. But once we got there, they were like, this baby's too small. And the baby needed to be 3 kilos to have surgery. Yeah. So
and because he was small because of the preeclampsia, hey, and like placental insufficiency and all that.
Yeah,
more so than his heart stuff.
Yeah. That was my understanding. Obviously, the heart stuff probably doesn't help in the like long term thing, but yeah, at that time, I think it was more the preeclampsia.
Yeah.
So I guess like that brings me to like that 34-week mark, I guess, where we were like, I just went to an appointment after work. Like I said earlier, I was having the black spots in my visions and I was really fluidy, had really bad carpal tunnel, and I was puffed all the time. And so I've gone to this appointment and there was like really high levels of protein in my urine, and she was like, this is getting like too bad now. So I went for that appointment and I didn't leave the hospital that day.
What was your blood pressure doing?
Yeah, my blood pressure had been high,
really
but
high.
I was already on medication for that.
Yeah.
And I was already taking like the aspirin as well. So there wasn't a whole lot more that they could do that they would consider safe, because they were just worried that the baby would deliver here and they didn't want that, needed to deliver in Brisbane. So that night they said to me, you're going. And I was like, well, can I have some time to go and pack my bags? Because at that point, like, I knew I was going to be in Brizzy for a while, and I
you
had
would not be
nothing ready.
trusting what Lockie would pack you.
Absolutely not.
You were getting G-strings.
He'd probably go to Kmart and buy a packet of G-strings just to be like, yeah, she's got no choice.
You'd have a cute little like fluffy pajama set.
Oh gosh, yeah. So like, yeah, the doctor let me go home. She said, you got 2 hours. So I went home and I packed as much as I could, and it grabbed my favourite pillow. And so went back to hospital, and then, within a couple of hours I was on the plane to Brizzy.
So you went via RFDS?
Yeah.
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 What was that like, being in the plane on the stretcher, or did you sit in the seat? Like, what was the
No,
mindset?
I was on a stretcher, and I actually had to pee because I was thinking, 2-hour flight, I'd be right. And I had been like not drinking all afternoon, knowing I was going on the plane, and because like I was quite big and puffy, like I said, and so like things were hard. Anyway, I'm in the middle of the flight, and I said to the guy, I was like, look, I've been watching the clock on the monitor. It's been 2 hours. Are we anywhere near landing? He's like, I'm sorry. No. I'm like, I've got to pee. Anyways, this was an experience, because I'm like, if this had been a female doctor, I probably wouldn't be so concerned. And I probably wouldn't have been so concerned if I had been drinking water all day. But I was thinking, this is going to stink and I'm going to be super exposed. So I was like, okay, cool. How do we do this? He's like, so you're going to need to like probably stand on the stretcher and pee into this biohazard bag. I was like,
wait, like joking. A spew bag or like a...
No, like a big bin bag.
Oh.
He was like, I don't think that you're going to be able to squat down to go over like what they had. And I don't know what they had, but I was like, surely that's better than this option. But anyway, nope, it wasn't. And so squatting on the stretcher was what I did. And I'm thinking, Katlyn, do not piss on your bed. Like, you've got a little bit longer to go here. Like, don't mess this up. Anyway, so the doctor's like, I'll go down to the other end of the plane and I'll face the back. So I was like, okay.
Well, I can imagine he was just squatting, standing up with a big bag.
No, I was holding the side of the plane with my elbow. And I'm holding the bag like underneath me to try and pee in it. And I was like, I will never do that again. Ever. Anyway, so I did it, but I had no choice, because like, you know what it's like, Dem, with when you're pregnant and you just like can't hold that bladder. Like,
and as soon as you think of it, you're like, you're done.
Yeah, you're done for. So yeah, did that. It was okay. Didn't piss on my bed.
Yeah,
so
that's
great. And I said to the guy, can I have another bag? He's like, what's it that big? And I was like, no, but I just like want to tie this one up and put it in that.
We're double bagging.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's probably pretty reasonable. So I gave it, and then I've like given him the bag, and he's just thrown it down the back of the plane. I was like, oh, this is messed up. And like, I talk a lot, so I'm trying to make this flight go quicker. And so after this point, I'm like, all right, I don't have anything left to talk about, because it's just awkward. So, I don't really remember like what was said after that, but I don't think it was much. So yeah, but then we landed in Brizzy, and we just caught like an ambulance to the hospital. They put me through there, and they were like, okay, like we're going to do a scan in the morning and we'll go from there. So they did that scan, and they were like, he's too little. You need to keep him in there because he's more likely to be growing in there than he is out here.
What was his approximate size at that stage? Did they tell you?
So where we were at home was scanning to be over 2 kilos. But they were like, he's like less than 1,800 grams.
Oh, wow.
And so this was at like 34 weeks. So they were like, you need to keep him in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can see why they would get that wrong too. Because, you know, in scans, they like move the little circle in and out, and you're like, you missed some there. I see it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And that like takes a bit of a percentage off or adds it on there.
Yeah, yeah.
By heaps.
Yeah. So they were like, yeah, no, this baby needs to stay in there. So they were just medicating me. They were doing bloods morning and afternoon. I was having to have my blood pressure done like all the time. And so they kept me in hospital for the 2 weeks. And I was like, look, everything's going okay. Can I go stay in some accommodation? Like, I'll go and lay in the bed. I just don't want to be in here. I was in a private hospital. I was a public patient. So there was like lots of people that were not impressed about sharing a room with me. And I was like, I get it. Like, these people have babies and I don't have a baby here yet.
And she won't shut up too.
And my mum,
She's in there yapping.
my mum sat at my cot side and was a really good sport and listened to everything I had to say. So, yeah, so basically, yeah.
I love that you just called it a cot
Cot
side.
side.
The real
Same.
NICU nurse is coming out in you.
At the bed, like, next to my bed. But it was really great in this hospital. They had room service. So
you would have lapped that up.
Oh my goodness.
I sure did. I made sure my mum didn't have to pay for a meal.
I'm Caitlin, I'll have 6 sandwiches, thank you.
I'd order
And
a
3
burger.
ice creams.
I'd order a burger.
This
and then
baby's growing.
I'm just making sure this baby is 3 kilos and it's born. So I'd be like, yeah, I'll get some sandwiches now. And then like half an hour later, I'd be like, oh, I'm still so hungry.
You're like, Mum, what do you want?
Cheese and crackers? All right. So, yeah, I think they were catching on. So they're probably happy to see me leave after that 2 weeks.
They had no food left.
Yeah, ate them out. But so then we went over to some accommodation, like just across the road. So I still had to go in morning and afternoon. I have my blood pressure checked and that sort of thing, and have some bloods done daily. And then I could do whatever I wanted during the day. Like, I wasn't necessarily on bed rest. It was just more like they were like, don't induce this labour, basically. Anyway, I was in Brisbane with my mum, and Lockie stayed at home. We had a mortgage, like we were quite young. So
And that's honestly what most parents do.
Yeah.
Like they send their partners home until they're needed.
Yeah. And like we couldn't afford to not. Like I'd put all my Centrelink stuff in, and I wasn't going to get paid maternity leave anytime soon. And like I figured like I could put it in and say like, oh, I don't know if you can, but like say like I've had to start my maternity leave sooner. Is there anything you can do to help? But we didn't like qualify for any like financial support or anything like that. So Lockie was up. It was his job to sort of like make it happen, I guess. So that just meant like less times that he could fly to Brizzy and see us, and he had to stay working.
At least he had a job. You had a job to do. He had a job to do.
Yeah.
How did you feel being away from Lockie for all of that time?
Yeah, like it was hard. It was hard, I think, because it had been so rocky leading up to that time. Like, I guess in a way, we were just both hurting because of like the potential outcomes, and like we just hadn't. Not that we hadn't been in a good place, but like just mentally not in a good place for so long. And then it was like, all right, well, you aren't going to be around each other for ages now too. So it just like added to it, because like there were so many things that I wanted to talk about that I didn't get a chance to talk about. And it wasn't stuff you wanted to have a phone conversation about either. Yeah. So it was like I said earlier, we didn't know the gender of the baby, and it was like talking about names and stuff like that. So it was really like surface level conversations, and I didn't really want to get in too deep because we weren't there to like support each other. So I kind of left those conversations until we were like together about like, what we would do in these situations. And they weren't necessarily things that I didn't get spoken about until we were like in Brisbane. So I was there for some of the appointments that he wasn't there for. So it was like hard to bring them up because I'm like, oh, you know, I don't want to have to make that decision anyway, but I also don't want to have that conversation with him by myself because like, yeah, it's just not nice stuff to talk about.
Yeah, of course.
And so we basically he didn't come down until the night I was in labour. Like I said, I stayed out of accommodation and then they made the decision. They were like, okay, 37 weeks, you need to get this baby out now. So when I think it was 36 plus 6, they were like, all right, we're going to induce you. But instead of inducing me, they accidentally broke my waters.
Oh.
So I, like half an hour later, started having contractions and like Lockie was like flying in that night. And then his plane got delayed. And so I was freaking out. Labour wasn't progressing because I was like stressed. And so he ended up getting in like early hours of the morning. And by the time we got to the hospital, it was, like sort of like 2 a.m. And I hadn't slept. Mum hadn't slept. And Mum's like, all right, I'm going to go. Lockie, you can stay. I'll go home and get some sleep so I can take over in the morning. So they did that. And then all I could think about was like, if I'm this stressed, how stressed is the baby? And so I was just like panicked all night and like I was like, I can't have this baby overnight because the NICU team won't be there. And obviously Dim being a NICU nurse, I'm like, she said to me like, oh, the NICU team will be there, like kind of gave me a bit of a rundown of like, what to sort of expect. And when I was like, it's nighttime, then I just assumed the NICU team wouldn't be there. But it turns out they're there all night. So, I was like, worried about that sort of stuff. And so by the time the morning come, like I was still contracting, but I just wasn't dilating. Like they kept saying like, you need to try and just like chill out. And I was like, I can't. Anyway, so things were progressing, went up to like the labour ward and got into like our room, like our birth suite room, and come around 8 o'clock and I was like, oh, like I have really bad back pain. Like it was really bad. And they were like, oh, like what do you want us to do? And I was like, oh, nothing. I just want to have the baby. So what can I do?
If anyone knows Katlyn, she was not getting that baby cut out of her. She was pushing it out.
Anyway, I was like, oh, like what can I do about the back pain? They're like, we can't give you any meds because we don't want to potentially like suppress the baby's respiratory, drive for when the baby's born. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean for me? And they were like, oh, like there's not much we can do except an epidural. And I was like, I'm not having that. Anyway, so I like went on for a little bit longer and then the baby started to get quite distressed. So I ended up getting that epidural, not by choice. Anyway, so had that and then come around like 2 p.m, things started to like ramp up and I was like, I'm going to shit. And they were like, you're not going to shit.
Not the shitting again.
I'm like, I am. But turns out that was just the pressure of the baby coming out. And so when he was born, it was like 2:14 in the afternoon and he was born and he cried. And that was like the most magical like thing I'd ever experienced. Like I was expecting him to like come out not breathing and needing like full resuscitation and that sort of thing. But he came out and he was crying and they did take him straight away and they made sure he was okay and then they brought him over to me to see him like just briefly before they took him back and they sort of gave him to me just to get a quick family photo and then with Lockie and then they took him again.
Katlyn sent me a photo like just after birth and he's laying in an open system just with a beanie on, nothing on, like nothing's wrong. I'm like,
just looking
wait,
around.
what? Like I thought this baby was supposed to like pretty well die and you're sending me a photo and it's got nothing on him.
I know, honestly.
He's
like
just
it was
looking around.
Yeah, he's got like this red like beanie on, like a little
beanie.
Santa.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it. You'll see it.
Photos. Yeah. And so like the funny thing, like we look back now is like when he was born, the doctors pulled him out and they showed him like to us. And Lockie's like, what the fuck's wrong with his head? And I was like, oh, that's just because like he's like got a bit of a cone head because
he's probably like,
And the doctor's like, it's okay. Like he's just been sitting in like, like the birthing canal, and so he's got a bit of a cone head that will you know, take a couple of days and everything will like sort itself out. But I think that we were just both so like staring at everything, like expecting his heart on the outside of his body, because we were like, we've been drilled into us like this shouldn't be happening kind of thing. Yeah. And so like when we actually saw him, it was like, oh, he looks normal. And so like that was like I don't know, a little funny memory that we've got, because Lockie literally was like, what the fuck?
So much relief for the both of you,
absolutely.
Probably in that moment.
Like for Lockie to see him
put the hat
breathing.
on.
Yeah, that's why they put the hat. Well, I mean,
hide it.
Knowing now, pretty much they all get a hat. But turns out, I thought at the time they were just trying to make Lockie. But yeah, so we left that hat on for a couple of days, and like the head sorted itself out. But he was very, very strong, and he came out full of life, and like that was just like amazing to see, because like I said, I was like not expecting him to do so well, and so it wasn't, I think, for like a few hours, and they were like, we'll get the cardiac team from the children's hospital next door to come over and, you know, check his heart out. Obviously sometimes they can make mistakes scanning in utero. So
were they also shocked at how well he was doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So in the end, it came down to the fact that his holes in his heart were so big, and that actually ended up helping him in the long run, because the blood flow between the heart was like a little bit more effective, basically, because more blood could get in there. Sometimes when those holes are too small, like there's
not enough can get around.
Yeah. And so although his oxygenated blood and his non-oxygenated blood were mixing, it was mixing, like I guess more was mixing at a time. So like more, you know, there was still more oxygenated blood being pumped around. So basically they took him like after a couple of minutes, and Lockie went with him. My mum stayed with me, and Lockie's mum went with Lockie and Cooper, which we found out was obviously a boy. And like the day before, we decided if it was a girl, I wanted to call her Hallie or Harriet, and if it was a boy, Cooper. And so we didn't have two name choices. So Lockie said to them, when they've asked, do you have a name? Yeah, it's Cooper. And I was like, well. We've confirmed it, I guess. There was no like, we don't know. It was just, Cooper. And for us, it was like, that's a really strong name. And like, it's a name he can grow into. And like, now, like, we call him Cooper Trooper. So it was like, it kind of worked out in the end. But yeah, so he went up there. I went off and did what I had to do, get some stitches. And then I went up and seen him a bit later that day. And it was just like the most surreal feeling. And the cardiac team came over, like I said, they were coming over from the children's hospital. They came over and scanned him, and they basically confirmed everything that the fetal cardiologist had sort of said, which meant we were in for a long road. So he had to grow still. Yeah, he was only born small.
So he's in NICU at this stage. Yeah. Any breathing support? Anything?
Not at that point.
Nothing.
No. Yeah. So basically, like at the time, being an adult nurse in a GP, I'm like, his sats are low. But
how low?
In like early 90s.
Oh, yeah. I remember me and you used to look after Cooper and put the sats probe on him, and back in the day his sats were like 60 and stuff.
Okay, it's like, that's a good one.
That's normal. And then like, something.
It definitely took some adjusting, because like, I mean, that was quite high considering like him being in the in the low 90s, but for his cardiac condition, like that was pretty reasonable. And now knowing that like neonates often when they're born don't have high sats straight away, I was like thinking, oh my God, like that's bad. But the more they explained things to me and like how his anatomy worked and that sort of thing, I kind of was like, okay, like this is good then. And we just took it day by day. But the Children's Hospital didn't accept him until he was close to 3 kilos. So he was only born at 2.3 kilos. So I did fatten him up a bit. All those burgers and sandwiches were worth it. So we were very lucky that we didn't have too far to go. So after a few weeks being in there, we got sent over to the Children's Hospital
How was his growth? Because I assume with cardiac and with him having to work so hard,
Yeah.
it wasn't as fast as potentially a normal baby.
Yeah. He was basically tube fed. I was like attempting breastfeeds, but he just would get so tired. He just didn't have the stamina. And like that was really disheartening because like all I wanted to be able to do was give him my breast milk. And I guess like that's really drilled into mums and like people, you know, are like, oh, it's such a natural process. But for most people, it's not easy and it takes a lot of time. And
it's a natural process at home. You're not at home, you know, everyone else is looking after your baby. This is your one job that you thought you could do, and it's like sort of taken away from you.
And like, you know, put them on like 3-hourly feeds. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll go home, have a shower and whatnot, and then like I'll come back, but I'd be back like right on time and they'd be feeding him and I'm like, he's not even awake yet. But they're like, nope, we got to stick to the 3-hourly feeds. And I'm like, okay, well. So I got to the point where I was like, I just don't want to leave the hospital because they were like, the NICU that I work in now has a different setup to the NICU that we were in there. And like, not that I knew this now, but I think that we accommodate it well because there's space for like a recliner. We have recliners available, but it was not as easy to get a recliner in that hospital. And so like you were just sitting in like a normal chair and like for mums that have just had a baby, like I was like, yeah, it's not comfortable. So like I'd get up and I'd go for a little walk because like things were hurting and whatnot. And I couldn't just sit there and have cuddles for hours on end because like I was sore and I wasn't sitting in a comfy chair. So and like they would also drill into me like he needs to rest, you need to put him in the cot, he gets too tired kind of thing. So we like tried to let him rest as much as we could, but I spent a lot of time at that cot site. I pretty much only went home for like a 5-hour sleep overnight because there's no like they don't really encourage for like us to stay at cot site in that hospital, which was fine. I get it now, but at that time I was like, I just want to be here. Why are you pushing me out?
With your baby.
Yeah. But once we transferred over to the children's hospital, like that changed. There was like a bed for me to sleep, which was kind of like a day bed, so you could sit on it during the day and sleep on it overnight time. So I could be there and I didn't feel like I had to leave. We had our own toilet and bathroom and that sort of thing. So it was a completely different experience in terms of like feeling like, I guess they more feel like you need to be there rather than, you know.
Were you in the NICU over at the Children's Hospital or the PICU?
No. So we went to the cardiac ward. So there's like a specific cardiac ward for cardiac kids and there's like a close obs room, which is like post-op. Otherwise, you're just sort of in like a single or a double room like within the unit. So there's lots of nurses and there's like 2 fish bowls at either end of the unit. So like they're always walking past and that sort of thing. So you never really feel like you're not going to be seen to if you need help or anything like that.
Is he on central monitoring in that unit? Yeah, great.
Yeah. And so he's growing, getting bigger. They were like, we're going to need to do surgery soon, but we want to wait until like the last minute basically, like until he really needs it before we do it. Just so that like what we do gives him like a better effect. It has better effect, I guess, because if they do it too early, I guess like he'll grow and then outgrow what they've done. So like they wanted him to get as close as he could to that 3 kilo mark so that they did it around that size so that he had more time to grow in between. Because if they had to put it on while he was too small, he would have outgrown it sooner, if that makes any sense.
So tell us what that surgery was.
Yeah. Okay. So the first surgery, what they had to do is basically put banding around his pulmonary artery. So that restricts like the blood flow to his lungs. So with like the next sort of stages of the surgery, the lung pressures all change. And it's quite complicated, but basically the lung pressure sort of determines like a lot with his heart now. And because the blood was mixing at the time, like the non-oxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood, they wanted to control like how much was being pushed in there and that sort of thing. So I guess they do that banding to prepare the rest of the body for what they're going to do next, basically. And so they kind of outgrow that, I guess, in the sense that their oxygen saturations start to get really low again. And then they're like, okay, yep, we're ready for the next surgery kind of thing. And then so that's how they sort of I guess, other symptoms and stuff. But when they're so young, they're not running around tiring quickly and that sort of thing. So it's hard to determine in any other way, I guess, at that age. So the first surgery was the banding. The second surgery is called a bidirectional Glenn. So basically they redirect the blood flow from the top half of the body by like taking the like the main, like the IVC and the SVCs.
So the superior vena cava, they redirect that flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So instead of it going back to the heart, it goes straight to the lungs.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's bypassing the heart. So effectively, at that point after that second surgery, there was still blood mixing, but because it was only like half of the amount of blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like the top half of the body's blood flow isn't going back to the heart straight away. So the lungs basically, they're straight to the lungs and then from the lungs to the heart.
Yep.
The third surgery is the Fontan. So basically they do the bottom half of the body's blood flow and they redirect it straight to the lungs. Yep. So there's none of this mixing of the blood anymore. Wow. It's just the blood coming from his heart to his body is the oxygenated blood flow. And that's why they get the SATs up, because like that blood's not mixing. It's not like losing that concentration anymore. It's pure oxygenated blood. Yep. Except for like little veins that trickle back there and that sort of thing. But it's too hard to go in and redirect all of that. And so
what did they do with his? So obviously all of the non-oxygenated blood goes back into the right atrium and then gets pumped to the lungs and then goes back to the left.
Yeah.
What did they do between the right and the left atriums? Have they just like kind of made that one chamber now, or left
so
his
from
ASD?
So from the very beginning it was basically just like one big chamber. I think in his first surgery when they did the ballooning, I think they ended up basically it was just like two little flaps at the top and the bottom of the top chambers.
Yep.
And they just basically dangled there. So they just sort of cut those little flaps off and allowed it to just be one chamber. So from the very get-go, he's pretty much had like one top chamber and one bottom chamber. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's amazing they can do that, because it's basically made the right side of his heart irrelevant. Like he doesn't even need it.
Yeah.
Like that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's pretty amazing what they do. But obviously with changing that circulation comes with like lots of issues later in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's things that we have to look out for sort of now from now on after the third surgery. But he I can't remember.
So talk to me about these surgeries. So did you go straight from the NICU to a surgery, or you said you got to take him home first?
Yeah, so after we transferred over to the Children's Hospital, we were there for like a week and they said, look, we're going to do surgery soon. We want you to take your baby home, meet your family and show him off basically. Mind you,
making memories.
Is January 2020, right in the smack bang of when COVID started. So I was
do you reckon they were saying
out.
that to be like they didn't think he was going to survive this, or they thought?
I think it was just like
they didn't know
this could potentially be your only opportunity to. So you might as well while you can, kind of thing. So yeah, we did, and we went to our house and we stayed there. And I didn't let anyone come over because I was a germphobe.
Some things haven't changed.
You can see him through the door.
Also, Katlyn at work right now, before she does anything, she like wipes the ground, wipes the floor, wipes everything she can wipe. I'm surprised she doesn't even wipe the baby.
Hey, she made me wipe down the whole table the other day. Reckons wipe down this table. I was like, okay, wiped it all down. Then next minute I come out of the room, she's wiping the table down.
What about how she wiped down like her computer and her keyboard, and then if she sees someone else on it, she's like, I already wiped that. Mine.
Go find another one. Go get a computer on wheels. I've started wiping down a few around me now because I don't trust yous.
Or like she'll come in, have you wiped your room yet? I'm like, no, I haven't even got there.
Well, I won't be opening your door then.
You can stay in there.
So yeah, when people were coming over to visit, they were like told they had to wash their hands and Q10 their hands, and then they had to wear a mask and all this and that.
I can just imagine you with signs up, wash hands.
Yeah. Literally.
A full 1 minute scrub.
Surgical scrub here, please. No, I was a little bit crazy, but I was just doing it with like obviously his best interest of heart.
Yes, of course. You're a good mummy. You're just protecting him.
Yeah, doing my best anyway. But yeah, it was really funny. I'd be like, Dim, can you come over? He's crying and I don't know how to stop it. And she'd come over and she'd be like, oh, she'd swaddle him up and she'd swaddle him nice and tight. And I'd be like,
that's too tight.
She'd leave. And I'm like, he can't breathe. So I'd unswaddle him.
And he'd cry all over again.
He was asleep, okay? And she would wake him up.
Anyway, I soon learnt that they like to be swaddled tight. The tighter the better.
No, he doesn't like to be he doesn't like his arms in. I'm like, whatever.
Turns out he loved it. So yeah. Well, after I learnt that hard lesson, I from then did not unswaddle any of Dimity's babies at home or work.
Yeah.
So so we had a nice little bit of time at home, and then he started to get sort of like cold sort of symptoms, and I was like, who has been here sick? Someone's been here sick, and I was like, ropeable. Anyways, we had an appointment with one of the doctors in the hospital where we live, and he was actually one of the neonatologists, and so we, like, the Brisbane hospital had organised for us to go and have a scan done by him, and so we went and had that scan done and whatnot, and turns out the cold symptoms was actually him in heart failure. And at that time I didn't realise that they had similar symptoms. Like, I mean, when you haven't had to go through that, you wouldn't have a clue. And so I was like, holy crap, how come I didn't notice it? Obviously I was feeling super guilty. And so basically it was like, all right, time to go back. It's time for surgery. So we packed our stuff back up and we went back to Brizzy. And within a couple of days of being there, he ended up going in to have that first surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're saying he was having symptoms of heart failure, was it like it was flooding his lungs full of too much blood, or was it his heart starting to fail?
His heart starting to fail.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was just a bit like overloaded, tired.
Yeah.
Had enough.
Yeah.
And so when he had that next surgery, there was just, obviously they changed the pressure in the lungs, which changed like the pressure in his heart, I guess. So it wasn't so intense for it. Yeah. Because it was obviously like half a heart working in full drive, trying to do what, like, a full heart would do. Yeah. So it was tiring. Yeah.
That surgery, was his chest opened up that time, or?
Yeah. So he had the first surgery, and then he was in PICU, intubated for, I think, 6 or 7 days, and then they decided that his oxygen saturations weren't doing what they wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. And so he ended up having to go back in and have the bands that they had put on loosened a little bit. So I think initially they'd put them on and they were too tight. So they had to loosen them off a bit and allow his oxygen saturations to come back up, because basically it was restricting too much blood. And so obviously, as you know, you need blood circulation of high oxygen saturations to the brain so that you don't have like a hypoxic brain injury. Mm-hmm. So when they noticed that it wasn't coming back up, they were like, yeah, we need to go back in. So he went back in and he had his second heart surgery at that point.
Through the same scar?
Yeah. So they reopened and they went back in through the same place. Yeah.
Katlyn, can you tell me about like how you felt before he was going for that first surgery? Like, explain that day.
So, like, you know what it's like when you're going for surgery. You wake up in the morning, you got to have your shower, you can't eat, you can't drink. You can't explain that to a newborn baby. So, like, they're crying, they want food and that sort of thing. And it's so hard to, like, like you feel like for me, I felt like I'm, like, restricting him from something that he needs. But at the same time, I was like, I'm doing it for the good. But I'm also like, I don't want this to be our last memory. And like, as messed up as that sounds, like, I was thinking like, his last memory of me is going to be my mum didn't feed me. And I'm like, I know that that's not really how it was. But like, for me in that moment, that's how it felt. And taking your baby in and handing them over, like, I had pictured going in, waiting at the bed until, like, they sort of took him into surgery. And when he was quite, like, for his first 2 surgeries, like, they didn't allow that I just basically had to hand him over in the corridor, and that was it. So that was really hard because I was like, I want to see that he's okay. Where are you going to take him? Where are you going to put him? What are you going to do with him next? Are you going to put a needle in him without him? Like, is it going to hurt him? Like, these are all the things I'm thinking of. And like leading up to that point, he was having regular blood tests, and like we do like a heel prick, but they were doing like a full venous puncture. So basically where they actually put a needle in and draw blood. And I get that they needed to do that because they needed accurate like blood results. And I like while I was studying nursing, I worked as a phlebotomist, so taking blood. And I said to the guy when he was taking the blood, you get one go. He looked at me like,
no shit.
This is my job. And I was like, yeah, well, you only get one go. And if you don't get it, you go get someone more senior.
Yeah.
And like, I remember being that person that people used to say that to, and I'm like, shut up or I'll make this hurt. But I was just like in full protective mode. I just wanted to protect him from any pain, and he missed it. I was like, he was looking again like he was going to have another go. And I'm like, no, go get somebody more senior. Otherwise, you can just do it when he's already sedated in theatre. Anyway, that's what they ended up doing because they couldn't get his blood. So I was like freaking out to my mum. I'm like, are they going to cannulate him before he's asleep? Like, and so I learnt that they didn't. They, give them the gas and they let them get a bit sleepy, and then they do those sorts of things. So that put my mind at ease a little bit, but it was very difficult to hand my baby over, and like to think that like I might never hold him alive again. Like, yeah, that was very hard.
What was your mum like? Like, how was she when she was there?
Mum was with me every minute of every day. Like, she was so incredible throughout this whole experience. And like, my mum loves him just as much as I do. There was times where I couldn't settle him when I couldn't feed him, like post-operatively, and my mum would hold him all day, and they have a really special bond now, and that's really special. But like throughout all of this, like mum was there all the time, and at this point Lockie was there. But I felt like in a little bit of me was like trying to hold my shit together so that like Lockie didn't fall apart, because I knew that he was trying to be like the tough one and support me, and I was feeling like I was doing the same. So yeah. And then the surgery went for a long time. I think it was like 9 hours.
Oh God.
Or maybe the first one was a bit shorter. Anyway, it was a long time. It felt like 3 days. But yeah, he came out and he was doing okay. Like I said, the oxygen sats were a bit low. He was in PICU, and we could go in and see him and that sort of thing, but like I felt like I couldn't touch him. His chest was left open. I could see his heart beating through like the dressing that he had over his chest, so that was pretty.
His chest was left open?
Yeah, because it was too swollen to close at the time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So they basically said they might bring him out on ECMO, which is like a machine that basically pumps the blood around the body when the heart can't.
And it oxygenates it for it and brings it back.
Yeah. So, but we were very lucky. He didn't need to go on that. And there were times where we were like a bit concerned, like his lactate got really high and was going down. And there were just like a few things throughout the time. But, like everybody's experience is so different. And like at that point in your life, you're like being a mum in NICU. It doesn't matter how sick or how healthy or what's going on with your baby. To you, your baby is the sickest baby in that hospital. And like
nothing else
you
matters.
Want everyone to make sure your baby is okay. So like I could see around us, there was like a cardiac win, and there was so many babies in there on ECMO. And I just like sat back and I looked around and I was just like, holy shit, like this is so real. This is so much more common than I realized. And I'm like, and we are really lucky at this point. Like things are going okay. And like I said, he was intubated for 6 days, and then they took him back to theatre, and they tightened the band. Loosened the band. And once he woke up from that, they extubated him. I think it might have been like a day or two later. And then, like he was doing.
Had they closed his chest at that point? Or
they closed his chest.
Yeah, great.
They did close his chest after that, which they were like they would have done regardless, but they waited to see how things went after everything, all the swelling had gone down. So yeah, once they opened the band, they could close his chest because the swelling had reduced by that point. Yeah.
And what kind of sedation was he on afterwards? So even though he was extubated, was he still on sedation to stop him from crying and stuff? Like with his chest?
Yeah. I honestly, like, it's such a blur to me, but he was on like so many different things. Like at that point in my life, I didn't have the NICU experience. So like he was on so many things, but I didn't even take note of what they were.
Yep.
There was so much going on in the background all the time. Like if he started moving, he was like sedated and like paralyzed.
Yep.
So he couldn't move. He couldn't do anything except rest and let his heart work out what it was doing. He was on lots of things, and they just slowly like reduced what he was on to sort of like wake him up. And if they didn't feel like he was waking up okay, they would just sort of increase it again and try again the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was surgery number 1.
Yeah. And then he got quite sick. He got C. diff after that. Once we went back to the ward. And because it was like around COVID time, everybody was like, oh, COVID swabs, you know, like PCR tests for those. And it was like basically difficult to get any other tests done on like the PCR. So mum's like, I work in a lab. I know that smell. That's C. diff. And they didn't listen to us for a couple of weeks. So they were treating him as if he had neck, which often little babies get.
And it's very common with cardiac babies.
Yeah. Just because of the poor circulation to the gut. And so they were treating him for that and not feeding him.
But you know.
Necrotizing endocolitis. Did he say it?
Enterocolitis.
Enterocolitis. And what is it?
I never say it right.
When the gut dies, hey?
Yeah, basically like when the gut dies. And like if you don't kind of find it early on, it can be pretty like brutal. Yeah. Basically it wasn't that, and it was the C. diff, but we didn't find out for a couple of weeks. So he wasn't feeding. They hadn't started any sort of like nutritional feeds like through like his.
And depending on what antibiotics he was on, it was probably making the C. diff worse.
He was really unwell, and that was really sad because like I'm like, he just made it through this, and now this, like, and it was something preventable. It's literally like a poo infection. So potentially someone else in the unit has it. Yeah. They've bathed their baby in that bathtub. We've used that bathtub, not knowing that it wasn't cleaned properly.
Yeah. Hence why you're such a stickler for wiping things down properly.
Good old Clonel. So,
but it's true, like it's preventable.
It is, yeah. And so like that just prolonged our hospital stay, and that just meant like less time that our family got to be around him, and less time Lockie got to be around him because Lockie had to go back to work. And once
that would have been so hard for him to leave you guys.
Yeah, it definitely was. And he would come up every couple of weekends, just for the weekend, knowing he had to be back at work like the following week. So, basically we just did that for, I think it was like a couple of months, and then we were eventually able to go home. And then we would have like regular appointments with the neonatologist and one of the PICU doctors back home, and they would do like regular scans and that sort of thing, knowing that we were going up to another surgery. And it was just basically waiting for his body to determine when it was ready for that. Yeah. Sort of like, controlled by how his body's coping. So
how long was it in between?
He had his next surgery at 8 months. So it would have been about 6.5 months between them. Yep. The next surgery was like a bit bigger. That's when he had the bidirectional Glenn and the DKS. And basically with that is when they do the top half of the body's blood flow. And so leading up to that surgery, his oxygen levels were dropping, and he wasn't like a kid running around still, but you could sort of see he was tiring and that sort of thing, sleeping for longer and those sorts of things leading up to it.
Were you monitoring his stats at home? Like, what were you doing? Did you have like an outlet or something?
No, so because his oxygen levels sat so low, the outlet would just constantly alarm. So we just had like a normal SATS probe that we could use like on his big toe or his thumb. Like, obviously not super accurate, but it was something better than nothing.
And what were his SATs?
around like the high 80s leading up to his second surgery.
Yep.
And again, like I thought, oh my God, this is low, but that wasn't too bad really in the grand scheme of things. And so like I guess they did that next surgery before he deteriorated too much, like in that happy medium place. So like I said, he lived like a relatively normal time. He didn't go to daycare. He I was on maternity leave with him, and he would have lots of aunties looking after him. And so I guess that like leads us up to when we had a couple of like hospital admissions in between that, just from like RSV and those sorts of things. And then
would he get really sick if he got any sort of respiratory? Like, would he have to end up on high flow and stuff?
Yeah, a few times he has. And he's just gone into like the kids ward and ended up on high flow or subnasal.
Yeah.
It's more just because his body just like it's the oxygen side of things for him. And obviously he doesn't have much in his reserve, so when he does get sick, he can go down quite easily.
Yep.
So it's more like just making sure that we don't get to a point where it's like critical. So yeah.
Yeah, so lead up to surgery number 2.
Okay, yeah. So coming up to surgery number 2, he was like happy and healthy. We went down there, and they were like, all right, let's do it. And so we went in. I got to go in with him this time.
Oh, wow.
I went in with him firstly a few days before the surgery. He had a cath lab done. And they just wanted to like check all the pressures of his lungs and all the stuff they'd done from the first surgery to make sure everything was like good to go.
Yep. And was that through his femoral artery that they went through?
Yeah. And so while they were in there, they had a good look at everything and they were like, yep, let's do this. So they did it. And like I said, I got to go into the theatre and watch him go to sleep this time, and like that was just reassurance to me that they were gentle and they were kind, and like
that's really nice.
He wasn't super upset.
Do you know why they let you go in this time as opposed to last time?
I think because he was a bit older and like as a newborn baby he was just asleep swaddled in like a wrap, and this time he was like, you ain't wrapping me up, I want my mum kind of thing. So like I laid him on the bed, and I just like while they were doing their things around him on the bed, like I just held his head and I just kissed him and told him how much I loved him and all those sorts of things. So and then they just like sedated him with the gas and he went to sleep, and then before they did anything too much they asked me to leave, so then I left. That surgery was a long surgery. They took him in like around like 8 o'clock, 7 or 8 in the morning, and he didn't come out until like 6, 7 o'clock at night. It was a long day. It was a long day for the surgeon.
A long day for you and Lockie as well.
Yeah, it was long.
Stressed.
I sat in the hospital like waiting. They have like a little board where you can check the progress and like where they're in PACU, like the recovery, or if they're in where they are. And like every time I checked it, I'm like, he's still in there. He's still in there. Something's wrong. And I was asking people to find out, but they were like, we can't. Like, you just have to wait it out. And so by the time we by the time he'd come out and we'd come back to the hospital, we went and had like a bit of dinner and whatnot. They said, we'll call you. We're out of theatre. We'll call you when you can come up to PICU. So we've come back up and we're just waiting outside the PICU doors. And as soon as we got in there, they were basically like, we want to extubate him. We've had a bit of trouble in surgery. Things didn't go together as easily as we'd liked. We want to make sure before the team goes home that he's going to breathe. And I'm like, why would you wait till I got here to do this kind of thing? But they obviously wanted me there.
Yeah.
And so they took all his like stuff off him, and he did do okay. His oxygen levels weren't exactly where they wanted them, but they said this can improve. So the main thing with this particular surgery is they're changing the circulation to the upper body. So that includes the brain, the head, all of that. And so with that pressure change comes major headaches. So he literally had a terrible headache for days. And trying to tell an 8-month-old, the more you cry, the more your head's going to hurt, is just like you can't do. And so he did a lot of crying. I did a lot of crying, and it was just so hard because like, you know, like you think like you made it out of here, but like now you're in so much pain. You have every time he cried, his chest would have hurt. Like it was just like, you know, a rapid, you know, leading on effect kind of thing from one thing that just like affected him in every other way. And so like to be that mum who is like sitting there trying to stop their baby from crying, because I'm just thinking you're making things worse, and like I couldn't stop him from crying. He wanted to feed, I couldn't feed him, like, so that was really, really difficult. But he was like, once we came over that hurdle, he did really, really well with that recovery. He's a really boisterous little boy, and he just wanted to go. He was like, I want to get in that car out that door and go right around, and he'd crawl around and he would do that sort of stuff. So we were very lucky that that surgery went really well after we got over the headaches, and like they call it a Glen head. And yeah, that went okay. But when we came home, we had like, I think it was like 6 or 8 weeks of, you know, like you couldn't lift him up under the arms and this and that. And so we hadn't been doing much. And then one day we decided, like, it was like the day after the 8 weeks was up. So we were like, yeah, we'll go down the river. We'll take him in the boat. We'll go for a little boat ride.
How old was he?
Just over 8 months. Like, yeah, it would have been he would have been about 10 months by that point, because he had his surgery around that 7 to 8 months. So he would have been about 10 months by the time 8 weeks went by. And so he had his life jacket on. We're out on the boat having a great time. And he'd fallen asleep on my lap, and I just, you know, thought like nothing of it. And I picked him up to turn him around to face me, and I noticed that his mouth was purple. And I was like, holy shit, he's not breathing. Anyway, I was like trying to take off his life jacket, and I'm like, oh my God, like freaking out, of course. And he was like unresponsive, and I couldn't feel his heartbeat, but I was also on a boat. So I didn't really know what was going on, but my instant thought was like, he's having a heart attack or something. Anyway, I was quite rough with him, and I was just trying to stimulate him to get some kind of response. And we eventually did. It felt like hours, but it would have been a few minutes. And he started to slowly get some colour back, and we were already by this point heading back to the boat ramp, because I was like, we were getting him to the hospital. Anyway, we thought like maybe it had been something related to his heart surgery that he'd just had, but they actually said like it could have potentially have been like SIDS episode that we just caught early. And I was like, holy shit, if the cardiac stuff's not going to take him out, something else is. And so we spent a couple of nights in hospital just trying to work out like what was going on. And then they sort of came to that conclusion, because there was nothing else that was wrong. And one of my friends was with me at the time, and because Lockie was trying to sort of say like, I don't know if it was as bad as you thought it was. And she was like, no, he was purple. Like, it was happening. Like it honestly just didn't feel real. And so from then that point on, I was like, I'm not leaving my house with him. I'm going to wrap him in cotton ball and leave him at home.
So thank God you like turned him around at that point.
I know.
Like imagine honestly, 5-10 minutes, it would have been so different.
Yeah. And like I was getting ready to like start giving him some CPR or something. Like it just felt so surreal. But I was just so lucky that obviously his heart hadn't stopped. And I think about it now as like a baby at work when they're having like a bratty and we have to stimulate them sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, like I guess it was kind of like that situation. And I was just so lucky that I caught it in time. And so for me, that was like, holy shit, like you can't take it for granted. Like he's done so well, but like there's so much else out in this big wide world that, you know, can affect him. So that was just like another little situation that we've had along the road that's been quite traumatic for us. But otherwise, like I said, he's been living relatively normal life. He's the coolest little dude. He has lots of aunties that love him so much, and he has done really, really well. And he, as he's grown, he, like leading up to his sort of third surgery, his oxygen levels went quite low, down into like the high 60s, low 70s, depending on the day and depending if he was sick and that sort of thing. But we tried to get him as close to sort of 4 years of age as we could. So he was 3 when he had that, like just before he turned 4. But leading up to that, he started daycare and he was just thriving. He's like his mum. He loves to chat.
He knows everything, like everything. And he's so cheeky.
He has the best memory.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell him a little, if you do this, I'll get you this one day. And he'll be like, at the shops, you told me you'd get me that one day. And I'm like, that was last year. That was when I was trying to get you to shut up in the car wash.
Literally, Caitlin told him once that there was a squirrel at my house or something.
A possum.
Anyway, I still get asked about this possum.
Yeah, because he didn't want Meg to leave. So I was like, Meg has to get home because it's going to be dark soon. The possum will be out. And, the possum hangs off her front door and she won't be able to open her door. So she won't be able to go home to sleep. And like, I make up these little fibs and then he catches me out in them all the time.
He's so smart. Literally, even last night, he wanted me to delete math seeds because he doesn't want to play the game. Yeah. And he reckons to me, can you delete it? So I just hid the app. You know how you can hide it? Yep, anyway, he like swipes to like the next page. He reckons, does that look deleted to you? I'm like, oh, he reckons you think I'm silly, but I'm not. I'm like, okay, you've definitely caught me out here.
Oh, he's so so clever. He's so witty too. He always has a comeback, and I'm just like, but yeah, makes me laugh. Hey, yeah, he honestly is like He knows he has this heart condition too, and he has from like as early as I can remember. I've been so open and honest with him, and like
remember when he used to say, show people his chest and be like, the doctor scratched me open.
Yeah. Oh, he actually said to the surgeon that did his surgery. He came to town one time for like a bit of like a presentation, I guess, to like a big group of heart families, and Cooper's like called him over to our table. And he's like, hey, you scratched me open. Check it out. And he's like lifted up his shirt. And he's like, you did that? And he's like, I did. And he's like, yeah, it's cool. Like, it's cool, hey?
Or like he plays people and he'll be like, oh, my heart's sore.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to get my heart a rest.
Tells the PE teacher at school, I can't play soccer. My heart can't keep up. I'm like, you do get tired, but like this is just
he so plays on
it. But it obviously does affect him in some ways too, because like all he wants to do is win all the time. And he recently had like his athletics carnival at school, and he's like, I don't want to go. I'm like, we have to go. And we've always pushed like participation. Like you don't have to win, you don't have to finish, but as long as you give it a go. Anyway, he was like, I don't want to give it a go. I don't want to come last. And I'm like, make sure you don't come last. Anyway, I said, and you know how you do that? By actually going in it, because there's some kids that won't. And he's like, oh, okay. And I said, and if you come last out of the people that run, that's okay, because you still had a turn. And I said, and you're only running with half a heart. I said, imagine if you had a whole one. Anyway, so he gets so like sad and that about it. And he had a turn at running the other day on his, the first one he did was his cross country, and I couldn't go, but Lockie went. And like Lockie's taken a video, and he was like just about ready to start walking. And Lockie's yelled out, go big dog. And his whole face lit up, and he's like Dad's here, because he couldn't see him before he started the race. And he did. He overtook 2 kids, and then he was so proud. He's like, I didn't come last. And then at the next one that he did at his athletics carnival just like a couple of weeks ago, I went to that one, and he really did not want to come last. And I didn't realise like before going, but they put them in like different heats, I guess you'd call it. And so like they all practice their race at school, and they put him in like the division. And so like he wasn't in like any of the top divisions. He was like in one of like the slower groups. Anyway, he came 4th, and he was like, ooh, like standing on there, like putting his muscles up at me. Like, did you see that, Mum? I'm like, yeah, but I saw. And then he's like, they're giving out all the ribbons, and he's realised that only the first 3 get a different ribbon. He's like, I want the blue one. That's for first place. And he's like, I didn't come last. And they're like, no, that's for first place. First, second and third get like blue red and I don't know, like green or something, and then participants.
Same as when we were in school.
Yeah, and then the participants get like a maroon one with like instead of like gold writing, it's like got silver. He's like, I've already got one of these ones. I want a different colour. And I'm like, okay, Cooper, next time run really slow at school when you're doing the practice run so you get in the last division so that you can win.
So funny.
He's like, okay, I'll do that. And I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have said anything because he actually probably will.
But you know what? Like only half a heart and it hasn't stopped him at all. Like he's still so active, so happy. Like,
yeah. He honestly, like,
you wouldn't know.
Would talk your ear off. Yeah. We're actually going to get him on the pod soon so everybody will be able to meet Cooper. So.
Yeah.
Before we do though, like what is next for him? Like what do you?
Yeah. So like I said,
actually we haven't even spoke about the Fontaine. Can you tell us about that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So like fast forward, Fontaine, it was in like October of the year. He was 3. So his birthday's in January. So he wasn't far away from being 4 and he would have been starting kindy.
October 2022.
So the Fontaine was like the last one that he's had, which was his 4th surgery. Basically, that's the one where they do the bottom half of his body's blood flow. So leading up to that, his oxygen stats were quite low. They were sitting like high 60s, low 70s.
And that's kind of like acceptable? Like were they okay with that?
Yeah.
Or were they kind of like,
no,
did he need supplemental oxygen?
They didn't. He didn't, sorry, at that point. But if that was
I guess
kind
like
of
how do you put that on a 4-year-old?
I know, yeah.
As well.
Hard.
Yeah.
And like that was the
Especially
thing.
on
Cooper.
Yeah. It was hard enough in hospital. Yeah, so basically it was like trying to find this line between it being like detrimental to the rest of his health and waiting until he was like big enough, because again, it's one of those things they can outgrow. And once the Fontaine's done, like I said earlier, these are all palliative things that they just do to help with quality of life. This isn't repairing. This isn't like making things, I guess, like fixed. They will never fix it. It's just doing things to help with his quality of life. And like after this, the only real
So do you think that they still classify this as like palliative care? Like what do they say it is?
They call this the palliative surgical sort of pathway. Yeah. So basically after this, there's not really a whole lot more they can do other than like a full heart and lung transplant. And as you can imagine, that's not readily available for young kids. So like if he was going to need that, hopefully it's not until like adulthood, so it's a bit more available. But hopefully he doesn't need it at all. He just keeps chugging along. But there's obviously other complications like liver disease and stuff that comes hand in hand with this sort of stuff. And that's not a matter of when. If it's a matter of when those sorts of things will start to arise. And they say around that 8-year mark is somewhere around when they will start to sort of be symptomatic of those things. So that's not far away. And that's pretty scary because like how much is it going to affect him? Yeah. And like, you know, like you only have one liver. So you only have one heart too. So like there's only so much that they can do really. Yeah.
Sorry, just going back to the Fontaines quickly, because he was like almost 4. Yeah. I remember you telling me that like he was nervous about the surgery, and he's very aware, like as you're saying, about it all. Yeah.
He's very honest as well.
Yeah, like he was having a lot of feelings about
Absolutely,
it as well.
So talk about like, you know, going down to Brisbane, preparing him for that and all that kind of stuff.
So I am very open with him and I didn't beat around the bush. And so we did lots of work of like, you're going to have a needle. You're going to have a cannula. Like all of those things. They're very scary for kids. And like trying to get him to sit down without traumatizing him even more by having a blood test leading up to that was like really challenging. Like we watched videos. We watched so much stuff just trying to prepare him and like trying to prepare him for like what after surgery sort of would entail. Which is so not what you think it would be when they're older. I was holding him, I'd cuddle him and like he didn't have to walk around. He didn't have to do any of those things. Like this time for the 3rd one, he was scared because he was scared of the pain and he was scared of if he didn't wake up. And like that was so hard to like navigate. I'm like, of course you're going to wake up. but I'm obviously fearful that he wouldn't have either. So, like I said, he's so clever and he asks really hard questions to answer. And I don't want to lie to him because this is his life. And
he'll know if you're lying too, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, he will not let you lie to him.
And like, I also don't want to like sugarcoat things too much because like these are all potential things that he's going to experience throughout his life. And I don't want him to be like, well, you never told me, Mum. Like, I want to know. And he does. He wants to know the ins and outs of everything. And so, yeah, he'd ask questions and I just have to try and answer it as like calmly and as like in the nicest way I could put it, basically. But he kept saying he was just scared he wasn't going to wake up. Was he going to see his friends again? And leading up to it, I took him out of daycare for a couple of months just because I wanted to make sure he was healthy and he wasn't going to have any kind of respiratory problem, like going into surgery, just to give him the best fighting chance. So it was like a long couple of months leading up to it. But I think it was definitely worth that, us doing that. So getting to hospital and actually going into surgery. Obviously, we had to like fast. And so I was like, I'm hungry leading up to the surgery. But at this kids' hospital, they've got like a play area in the waiting room. And so that was a lifesaver because all of these nervous questions he was having that morning, he just went and played and he found some friends like he always does. And he distracted himself until they called his name. And then by that point, it was like almost too late for him to think about things anymore. It was like we were going in there and like he had to lay on the bed and he previously, when he's had like a cath lab or something like older, he's had like a strawberry mask. And on this particular day, he said to the lady that he didn't want a strawberry mask. He just wanted a plain mask. And she was sort of like, I've already got a strawberry one out. This is what you're going to get. And so he was like, no, I don't want a strawberry one. So he was adamant he wanted a normal one. And so I'm trying to keep him calm, like laying on the bed. And he was just not having it. He wanted like a plain one. And so he was getting really upset. And like previously they would like get him to like breathe in the mask, you know, doing like the in the mask. And then the lady was pretending that he was blowing up a balloon, which was just like the bag. And he thought that that was great. And the more like the higher the balloon got, he was like trying harder and harder and he's getting sleepier and sleepier. And then he just was out. And so this time I was like thinking, yeah, we'll do that again. I'll tell her that and we'll do that. And then he was getting upset about the strawberry mask situation. And I was just like, can you not just change the mask? And she's just blatantly said no. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So he's stressing out. I'm freaking out. I'm like obviously keeping my shit together, but I was like nervous for like the surgery. And then I was feeling really sad again because I'm going through, oh my God, this is going to be his last memory. Anyway, she ended up, it was really horrific. She ended up pulling the blanket over his head, put the gas up and basically said, you're in a tent. And
she was like gassing him
out under the blanket.
Oh, I hate it.
And just like making, like he's screaming and fighting it. And they just all held this blanket down over the top of him. And it was so awful. And like all I could do was like literally stand there and just like tell him that I loved him and that like he was okay.
Oh
and
my God.
it was just honestly so awful. And like that has traumatized him now. He can't even like be around balloons, like hates balloons because like he thinks it's associated to that because like from the previous lady blowing up the balloon and stuff. And like it didn't need to be like that. All she could have done was just give him the non-strawberry mask and like it wouldn't have been so traumatic. And he remembers that. And like they say, he won't remember any of this. And like every time they've said that to me, he's remembered it, every second of it. And so like I find that really hard because like he has nightmares and he often says to me that he feels like he's not going to wake up like he did when he had his surgery. And that just breaks my heart because like you don't want to ever hear your kid like be fearful of going to sleep because they're scared they're not going to wake up. And yeah, but
it just shows how important nursing care is.
Absolutely.
And everything that we do is just so important to every person we interact with.
And like you might not realize in the moment like what kind of impact that will have on that person's life for the rest of their life. And like I think sometimes, you know, some nurses get a little bit like complacent, and
yeah, because this is just like their everyday.
Yeah,
it's so weird that you say that about the strawberry mask, because last night when I was on TikTok, I was watching this lady. She had just a normal mask, and she had about like 6 summer Fridays, and she's like, every person that comes in, I say, oh, what flavour do you want? She's like, normally the cotton candy one is like normally the favourite, and then what she does is she like puts it on the inside of the mask for the kids, so they choose. But I was literally watching that last night.
Yeah, it honestly makes such a big difference. Like they feel like they're in control of something, I think. And like previously we've taken the mask home, and it's like his little show and tell thing. So he was like quite upset about that, and that was just really hard, because like I was expecting it to be like nice, easy, okay, he's peaceful, he's okay, he's asleep. But I didn't leave feeling like that. I was like, that was so traumatic for him, and it was so traumatic for me, and I'm trying to hold my shit together for him, because I know if he sees me stressed, then he gets stressed. And so like I was just, like, it's okay, everything's all right, buddy. Like even though he's like hysterically under this blanket.
Did you ever say anything to anyone else about that? Like,
I told like the nurses on the unit and stuff, but like they just I don't think like anything ever really gets done.
If you're listening to this lady, you're in trouble.
You've tortured him. But he went in, had that surgery, and then again, like quite traumatic post-surgery. They had him intubated for a couple of days before they extubated him, and things did go really well, thankfully, for him. And the process of weaning him off all his meds went really well, and when he woke up he was doing really good, but they had him on fentanyl, and that was managing his pain beautifully, but they wanted to get us to the ward after like a week or so. And so no, it wasn't actually quite a week, it would have been like 3-4 days at most, and they wanted to take him off the fentanyl, and so they stopped it, and then they started him on another medication, one that I actually had never really heard of, to be honest. And he did not agree with that very well. He was vomiting, but at the same time, his physio was there, and she was trying to get him up for the first time. So I'm like, he's not ready. He needs to be on some different medication. Like, it's making him vomit. He's so upset, and like nobody was listening to me. And I was just like, I don't want you to get him up. And they're like, we need to get him up. He needs to be able to get up before we can get to the ward. Anyway, so they basically forced him to get up and go take a few steps, and basically with no pain relief on board, because like he's just vomiting it up, and he was in pain, like it wasn't working. And I hadn't seen him like that this whole time post-op. Like he's been happy as, not in any pain. And that made him really fearful, like moving forward for like getting up and out of bed. But we got to the ward on this medication, and I was like, you will get me another doctor to review his pain now. Anyway, they were like, oh, we don't have anybody available until he's finished doing whatever. And I was like, well, that's fine, I'll wait till then, but you will get him, and he'll come here and he will do something. Anyway, because I was being so stern, I think they were like, okay, like they found somebody else, and she came and changed the medication to something else that he could have on the ward. And it like they given him like lots of Ondans and sort of antiemetics in the meantime, and they weren't working either, just because obviously he just didn't agree with this medication. So once they changed that, he was like back to himself again. And I was just like, I'm so glad that like because in the meantime I've started working in NICU, and I've like learned more and more that I need to like advocate for him. And so I've gotten better at it over the years, but I guess little 22-year-old me just like let things happen even though I didn't agree with it. From that point on, I was like, nah, I'm not going to tolerate it if I don't think something's right. So I got really pushy. They probably hate to see me coming now, but I'm like, nope, you won't be doing that to my child. No. And so I made them change it, and then so he had like a really good recovery from that point. He was up and walking around, running around. But with the Fontaine, they've got 3 chest drains in, and sometimes the drains can be in for quite a substantial amount of time. Cooper had his in for ages. And
like all 3 of them in for
no,
ages?
They took 1 out and 2 stayed in for longer, and they took the 2 out at the same time. And
how long are we talking?
30-something days. Yeah.
Lucky.
You're joking. A whole month.
Yeah.
That's insane. And how much was it draining each day?
It was different every day, but I think it had to be under like 50 mils a day for them to take it out.
And that took a month.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There was another little boy who was in there, and he had been in there longer than us. He left just before we did, but he had been in there for ages. But with the Fontan, there's like the risk of them continuously draining, and some kids have to change their diet and do all these different things just to help it. But we were like, please don't like go down that avenue. Like, please make this an easy recovery. And like,
where's all the fluid coming from?
Just like in the chest cavity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So was it like leading towards like chylothorax kind of situation?
Yeah. So like that is like one of the potential risks of the Fontan.
Yeah.
It's like a pretty common one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's when they would need to like change the diet and that sort of thing.
Wow.
So we didn't get to the point where we were going down that avenue, but we were in there for, quite a few weeks. And so he was over it by the end. It's hard to entertain a 3 whatever, busy kid in the hospital.
So was he just like carrying around his drains and running
around?
They
had like a little like mini Coles shopping trolley, and my kid put his oxygen cylinder in that and push that around, and then I'd just have to shuffle along behind him carrying his drains. And like I'd be like, slow down, mate. And he'd be like, oh, I'm on a mission. Like, and like he like would play with his sister and the other little kids in the unit, and you'd be surprised the kids running around that place with drains in. Like, you just think like no adult would be doing this a week post-op, let alone like, and like when they're in there for so long, the skin's like growing around the drain, and so like if he moves in the wrong way, it hurts. So he'd be like, all right, I'm ready go back to bed now. And so he'd go lay down and just chill out for a bit, and I'm like, oh, thank God.
You're tired too.
So it was like good that everything went really well. And then when we had them out, that was again like quite a traumatic experience. They gave him a little bit of midazolam, and that was it.
Lovely.
And pulled them out. But for him, luckily for him, midazolam works the opposite effect. So he gets really hypo. And so we learned that quite early on, but they didn't listen to me, and they gave it to him. And like he was well aware of everything that was going on. So now we have a fear of Band-Aids, and we have a fear of touching for a while, touching his tummy anywhere near anything. Like he would get really funny about it. Sometimes I could be like, oh, what if Diddy does it? Diddy's a nurse for babies. Like she'll be so gentle. And then he like might let her do something. But it's taken a lot of time to get to the point where we're at now, where he doesn't have all of these like fears of things. But
it's really disappointing that they weren't listening to you.
It is. It honestly is. And I think like I just feel sorry for other families that don't feel like they have a voice in those situations.
Or people like that aren't as educated as you.
Yeah. There's been like a lot of moments during like this whole journey for us where we're just like, this is so wrong, but like nobody else is obviously saying anything, and so like it's hard when you're just a single voice in like a big world. Like so and just things could have been done differently to cause less trauma, but I mean, it's a traumatic journey, and we're going to have trauma. We're all going to have trauma. And I guess you don't really realize it until you get home and you like sort of start to like go like, holy shit, what just happened? Like, but that's part of it, I guess. Yeah.
And so,
what's next for Koopy?
Yeah, well, he's a big brother now, and he's got a little sister, Hallie, and she'll be 3 next month. But he's just showing her the ropes of how to be a little terror. And he is at school. He's doing really well, and we just really hope that he continues to do really well. We've been super lucky. There's a lot of families that we've come across on our journey that haven't had it quite so easy. And as much as it's been hell and back, I feel like we've coped and managed super well, and he's just been so incredibly amazing throughout it all. And I think like if he hadn't have been so good, like we would just be in a completely different position. Like, we're just very lucky that it's all played out the way it has.
Tell us about your decision to have another baby, Katlyn.
Yeah, that was difficult. I guess like Hallie also wasn't a planned baby. She was a bit of a surprise also. a good
Caitlyn
scam
reckons
at
like
work.
this is only 2 times she's had sex.
Yeah, mum, dad. So basically, she was unexpected, unplanned. I wanted more kids. I always wanted to have like a big family, and my husband was always like, "Man, I don't care if we have kids or not." And when we had Cooper, he was like, "Yeah, we like maybe one day we'll have another one," but we were both just a bit traumatized and like scared because, you know, they sort of said to us in the early days that if we were to have another pregnancy, there is a chance that that baby could have some sort of cardiac defect. And we were like, oh shit, do we have it in us to go through this again?
Were they thinking it had like a genetic component?
Well, not necessarily. I think it was just like once your body has sort of made a baby that way, maybe.
Yeah, right.
You know,
It
like
increases the
it increases the chance of similar sort of outcome.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not talking like 1 in 100. I'm talking 1 in thousands. But there was still that chance there, and the chance like of us having a cardiac baby from the get go was just what they call an accident in utero. So, you know, like we got unlucky the first time. What was to stop us getting unlucky again?
Yeah.
And so early on, obviously, I blamed myself. I was like, what have I done? I caused it, you know. So I was worried that I was going to do something wrong again if I was to have another baby. And so that was like something we hadn't really decided when we were going to do again. But then when we found out we were pregnant, we were like, okay, it's happening. And I was so fearful of like things going wrong. Yeah. And I did absolutely everything perfectly throughout my pregnancy with Cooper. I was like one of those people that didn't cabana or the salami because I was like, no, can't have that when you're pregnant. And so I was like, you know, tried doing that all again with Hallie just to, you know, reduce any risk of anything. And
had they started you on aspirin straight away?
From the very moment I found out I was pregnant with her. Yep. And I was very lucky. I learned at the time that if you've had it before and you start the aspirin and that and it's the same parents that by doing it early on it decreases the risk of preeclampsia dramatically. So I was like, give me it. I'll take it. So I guess like that all worked out well. We didn't have any more preeclampsia with Hallie.
Oh, that's
maybe
great.
Just like a very mild, if anything. My blood pressure wasn't really affected, but I was starting to get like the black vision and
what
stuff.
What about puffy? Were you puffy?
I was puffy.
With Hallie, I remember.
I was puffy, but I didn't have the high blood pressure like I did with Cooper.
Yep.
And although I didn't have the carpal tunnel and the high blood pressure, I had many other messed up symptoms.
Most people listening will know.
And so throughout that, I was like every scan. I was like, count how many chambers of the heart there were. Is the you know, right arteries going into the right spots. And I'm pretty sure the lady was like, okay. Like, so I think that they were a bit like, you know, okay, like you've obviously got something going on. Do you have another baby? I'm like, yeah, a cardiac baby. Oh, okay. Yes. Well, there's this. And so we went through MFM again and they made sure everything was going well. And basically she was a healthy baby. She was just little. So
did you get more scans that pregnancy?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think by the time I was like 28 weeks, I think they were doing like fortnightly scans. Good. I think because she was a little bit on the smaller side, but also peace of mind for me.
Yep.
I think I had like, they could see I was very anxious and I obviously had a lot of trauma there. So they were just trying to give me that peace of mind, but also as well, making sure that there wasn't something that they were missing.
Yep.
And obviously like these hearts are tiny. Like, we're talking like the size of a 50-cent piece. So, like for them to be able to pick up every single detail from early on is pretty amazing. But there's obviously things that go missed. So they just were making sure that they weren't missing anything. And they were being thorough about it. And so I ended up having her at 38 weeks and she was born healthy and she's remained healthy. She does have a little hole in her heart. Which is like nothing like crazy. She just won't be able to be
PFO or something.
Yeah, she just and basically she just won't be able to be like a scuba diver or something like that. So that's okay. I won't have 2 scuba diver kids. So, but yeah, otherwise she's happy, healthy, and she's got her big brother to look up to. So, and he at first took his big brother role very seriously, and he would like tell her what to do. And now he's like, all right, boys only in here, get out. So, but she knows about his heart now, and he tells her all the ins and outs of everything and what he remembers. And I don't think she really understands. She just knows he has a big scar on his chest. And like for his last surgery, she was there. She was along for the ride, and I was breastfeeding her at the time. So like for her, that got cut off because I had to stay in hospital with him. And so like, you know, it's affected her life as well throughout this whole journey. And I think like had I had like a heart kid second, like it would have just changed our lives even more. But he was my first baby. And so I think that because he was first, like we didn't have to take anyone else into consideration at the time. I think it'd be so much harder for these families that are, you know, having kids, healthy kids, and then having like a cardiac kid or any other child with some sort of medical illness or condition. Yeah.
Yeah. So when does he sort of get put on the transplant list? Is he already on it?
No. So like once things sort of start to deteriorate, they'll look at what needs to happen from there. Yeah. Some people, their other organs start like shutting down before they get to the point of being able to be like a candidate for a lung or heart transplant. So it honestly is just case by case, and it's dependent on the person at the time. But it's so up in the air.
It's honestly crazy to me that he's not on a list. Like,
I know.
Maybe not on an active list, but on a list. Like, you know, it's like I kind of think in my head, and I don't know how it works, but surely there's like an active list, they need them right now. Yeah. And then this is a list of they will need them, you know, like that's kind of how it works in my head.
That list would probably be so long, so they'd be like.
And I think that's the problem. Like they're not as available.
Yeah.
It would be difficult to make that decision to part with that sort of thing in those circumstances. So I think there's not many options, and they need small ones because these kids have to grow with them. Whereas for adults, you know, people are organ donors and they've already made that decision for themselves, and so they're just more available for adults. So I think, you know, when they are really harsh with like the, you know, pushing the termination and stuff, I get it is like for some people like a feasible option. And obviously because of like the potential for needing those things. And so there are kids in hospital that are just sitting there on ECMO awaiting like a potential heart replacement. So like to be in that situation would be completely like soul wrenching. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And here's a shout out to everyone to become an organ donor, please.
Yes.
Kids like this that grow up need them. So always be an organ donor.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
We have all absolutely enrolled ourselves.
All right, everyone. The time we've been waiting for. Let's get Cooper.
Let's get Coopy on.
He has been
my little
waiting
best
for
friend.
his little moment to start. He's been telling everybody in the last few days leading up to this. So.
Meg FaceTimed me last night, and then he's so excited. I'm going to be on TikTok.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to be on a podcast and I'm going to be posted. No, I think he even said blasted on TikTok. Blasted. So give him some likes. He'll be so excited.
Hello and welcome back to the Premi Pod. I'm on with my bestest friend in the whole world, Cooper Davis. You say hello.
Hello.
Cooper's a bit nervous, but that's okay.
Wait.
All right. What are we talking about today, Cooper? Do you know?
We are going to talk about how you had a surgery and what
and
did
the
you...
doctor? What did the doctor do to you?
Do you used to say the doctor scratched me open?
No.
No?
Well, what did he do then? Tell us.
He cut me open.
Oh.
Why? You got to put this microphone up closer to your face so we can hear.
Because I had to have a surgery.
Why though?
Because I had...
Why?
Because I had a bad heart.
Oh. So can you tell me a little bit about what happened? Did you go on a plane to get your surgery?
Yes.
Yes. Where did you go? Do you remember?
Brisbane.
Oh, you do remember. And where did you stay?
In the doctor's.
Yeah. All right. And then can you tell me a little bit about the surgery? Did you make some friends at the hospital?
Yeah, I made some friends when I was playing and even at the other play area.
Oh, wow. And can you tell me a little bit about, going to surgery? Was the doctor nice to you? What happened?
Well, the doctor was nice, and they had to put lots of pipes in me.
Pipes?
To give me to take all of my bad blood out.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You're so brave doing that, you know.
You are. You're so brave.
Do you remember what your belly looked like when you came out of the surgery? Was there things hanging off your belly?
Yes.
What were they?
They were the pipes.
Oh, yeah. Did they hurt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Was there other kids with pipes?
No, just me.
Okay. Yeah.
What else? Tell us something else about your heart and your surgery.
Well, at the end, I got a special surprise.
Oh, what was that?
It was like some kind of Paw Patrol thingy.
Oh, yeah. You like Paw Patrol, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's your favourite on there?
My favourite is Chase.
Oh, yeah. Well, Chase is the best.
You know how you have a different heart from everyone else?
Yeah?
Does it make you different?
No.
What does it do? Does it do anything different?
Yes.
What does it do?
It makes me do something wrong properly, and I can't run races, but
I've heard you've
You came third?
Yes.
Whoa. Third or fourth?
I never came first.
Yeah, okay. But that's cool.
Kirsty, do you have any questions for him?
Can we see your scar, Coops? Oh my goodness. Show us your muscles.
Does it hurt?
Okay.
What about your microphone? Does it hurt?
No.
Doesn't hurt anymore.
All right, tell us any other gossip about your doctors or about your scar or about your heart. What else?
Well, when I tried to get out of bed, it really hurt, and I couldn't get out.
Yeah.
So then a couple more weeks a day, I got out the last time, and then I felt much better.
Oh, good.
Oh, yes.
You're so brave, hey, babe.
Yeah.
You're so brave. Did you have your sister there with you? Hallie? Did you have Hallie around?
At the hospital?
Yes.
Yes. Was she good? Did she play with you and look after you?
Yeah, but I didn't play with her because that's when she had to go into the hotel.
Oh, yeah, she went to the hotel.
What was the hotel she stayed at? Do you remember?
But I forgot. Mom, why did you tell me that?
Ronnie Mac?
It's Ronnie Mac.
Oh, Ronnie Mac, I forgot.
Do you like Ronnie Mac?
And they have McDonald's there too.
Oh, yum.
Of course you know.
We love Macca's.
Kirsty, do you have anything else to say to him?
What was your favourite treat you got when you woke up?
Cocoa. Yeah, Cocoa Pops, the white one.
Oh, the white
rice
one.
bubbles.
Yes, rice bubbles.
You like them?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? Cool. Oh, very nice, Koopy.
Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the land of talking about my heart.
Oh, that's nice.
Amen.
Amen. Can you do this? I reckon you would be the fastest if everybody else had half a heart.
Oh,
What do you reckon?
I reckon.
Yeah, I reckon.
Oh, yeah.
You want to have a race?
What is something that you're good at?
Yeah.
I'm good at going on the monkey bars that's small.
Wow.
Oh, wow, nice.
You're good at monkey bars, hey?
Yes. And I went through the middle before.
Whoa.
Made it all the way.
Good job.
What else are you good at?
I'm good at playing soccer and being the goalie.
Oh, yeah. You're good at catching the balls and making sure they don't go in.
Yes.
Oh, very
Do you
nice.
have anything to say to the doctors and everything that did your heart surgery? Just started at school. Good job, Coops. We're proud of you.
Yeah, and I'm really proud of you for being so brave. I know that it was scary, but you're so brave, and we're all super proud of you, Koopy, and we love you so much.
He's like, okay, I'm
It was me, and And when I got there, I saw a lot of people. And then when I went, and then at the end, I got some snow cones.
Oh, very nice.
You were there too, weren't you, Meg?
Yes, I was, darling. You led my walk.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were the leader, hey?
Yep.
And why did you get to do that? Do you remember?
No.
Because you were the ambassador because you were coming up to your surgery.
Oh, yeah.
You should say this, Cooper. Shout out to Heart Kids. We love you.
Shout out to Hulky and we love you.